and thank you everyone for joining us for this special charla today. We know you have choices with your time, and we're thrilled you chose to spend your time with us. We have an exciting and I believe a timely presentation about telling our Latinx stories, which are American stories, the right way. So I want to thank the Walt Disney Company for sharing their process, their vision, their talent with us, and all of you this afternoon. Christine Cadena and the team, thank you for your partnership and for working with us to create this space. It seems like it's all magic, but it's a lot of hard work and thought. Today, we're taking a behind-the-scenes look in the discussion of the new film adaptation of West Side Story. The film is directed by the legendary Steven Spielberg and will tell the classic tale of fierce rivals and young love in 1957 New York City. The panel discussion will focus on that process, featuring voices from in front of and behind the camera, speaking to the production's commitment to authenticity, Latinx representation in Hollywood, and why West Side Story is more relevant than ever today. I'll be moderating a remarkable panel, including individuals who I've met before, who work closely on the making of this film, which, by the way, is set for release December 2021, and I cannot wait for this to come out. I had the privilege of meeting our panelists, as I said, last summer on the set of West Side Story, and I was genuinely impressed with not just the artistry and the top-down care that was going into production at every level, but their personal commitment. And I mean personal commitment to getting this right. Joining us today are casting director Cindy Tolan, production manager Carla Raj, actor Ana Isabel, who plays Rosalia in the film, and my friend Ben Lopez, who is executive director of the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, or NALIP, who we actually have the privilege of partnering with. I'm excited for you all to hear about their experiences and how West Side Story can serve as a model for other productions looking to involve more voices from underrepresented groups. That is a tall order, but after you get to know them on this panel, you'll know that they're up for the task. I also want to congratulate my good friends Estuardo Rodriguez and Danny Vargas for leading an effort to have a Latino museum on the Mall here in DC, so millions of Americans and visitors from around the world can hear our stories. The bill to build a Latino museum just passed in the House and is headed for the Senate, and I appreciate their leadership and resilience because it's been a long process. When I told them we were doing this charla with Disney about West Side Story, they immediately said, yes, there will be a place for West Side Story at the new museum. Estuardo's daughters are actually a part of the audience today, so I'm thrilled that a 15 and 14-year-old are going to learn about this process firsthand from Disney and our panelists. That's why we're doing this. I also want to shout out Monica Villarreal and Eric Rovner, who lead our board in the media and entertainment committees and are dedicated to equity and opportunity for underrepresented communities in front and behind the camera. As a side note, we encourage all of you to use the chat feature, and please highlight all, not just panelists, so your comments can be shared with everyone. And the hashtag is Community Charlas. So let me get right to it in terms of the panel. I am really energized and heartened by projects like West Side Story and Coco, because we did something similar for Coco on the Hill a few years ago, and Ben served on that as well with our partners from Disney and Mike and the whole team. But they're breaking new ground when it comes to engaging the communities that they're going to represent through their films and programs. So without further delay, let's start the conversation with our panelists, who I introduced you to for a couple of minutes ago. So let me just jump right in. So Ana, Cindy, and Carla, can you just introduce yourselves very quickly and just tell us about your role on the film?
I'm Cindy Tolan. I'm a casting director, and I cast all of the actors, dancers, and singers in the film.
Ana, you go next.
Me?
Yeah.
Hi, hola, my name is Ana Isabel. I play Rosalia. I would say that my role is Anita's and Maria's best friend. And I'm an actress, singer, and dancer.
I'm Carla Reich. I was a production manager and co-producer on the film. I am Latina. I'm from Argentina. I was raised here in the States. This is, I think, my 4th or 5th film with the Spielberg camp, and I'm currently prepping his next film for the spring of 2021.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Ben, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about NALIP.
Definitely. My name is Ben Lopez. I'm the Executive Director of NALIP. It stands for the National Association of Latino Independent Producers. We're the pipeline launching pad of writers, producers, and directors. We also do advocacy to make sure that we promote more voices of color, specifically Latinx, in front of the camera, behind the camera, above the line, and below the line.
Okay, I want to jump right in. So Cindy, you're up first. So West Side Story is one of the most well-known and most produced Broadway musicals of the last century. Can you tell us a little bit about Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner's vision for a 21st century West Side Story and how that informed you, your job as casting director? And that's not an easy feat, by the way. It's like saying, oh, we're going to cover the entire Beatles catalog or something. I mean, this is quite a daunting challenge that you took on.
Well, first I have to say that Steven Spielberg and all of his team are incredible and always want to try and do everything and get everything accurate and right from the get-go. And I think when I first sat down with both Tony and Steven, it was in December of 2017. And the first conversation was Steven basically said, Cindy, I'm not going to make this movie unless we can cast it correctly. So can we do that? And I said, yes, we can do it. We have to try. And I was certainly not going to be the department that didn't make this movie happen. So in that first meeting, it was about how are we casting this film? What are we looking for? And where are we looking? And it was just about representation across the board, starting with Rita Moreno as quote unquote doc, but also as an executive producer. And so then in January of 2018, we started. And when I say started, we just went, we just fired on all cylinders everywhere across the world. And we did an international search. We saw 30,000 people total. We went to 7 cities. We hired local casting directors within the Latinx community to partner with us. We went to Puerto Rico twice. Steven and Tony went with us once as well. And Zoraida Lopez is a casting director in Puerto Rico, and we worked very, very closely with her and her team. And Carla, you'll appreciate this, but funnily enough, we had film students in Puerto Rico helping us when we were doing our open calls, and who were extraordinary and truly gifted. And Lady Roldan was just a recent graduate, and she became my casting assistant in Puerto Rico, and then she became a production assistant on the film throughout the entire shooting of it.
Wow.
We stole her. She was amazing.
We stole her, and now we fight over her.
So
and the others, Jose and yeah.
And Cindy, if you were casting the role of a congressman, you would be casting in Puerto Rico or in Florida, you would be casting Darren Soto of Florida, who we are honored to have here with us today. Congressman Soto represents Florida's 9th district and is a member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and serves on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce and the House Committee on Natural Resources. He is also the first Floridian of Puerto Rican descent to serve in Congress.
Amazing.
And by the way, he's got a lot of company now.
There's never enough. There's never enough. That's what we find. Never enough.
And he has always been a strong voice on behalf of Floridians and Puerto Ricans alike, as well as the entire Latinx community. He's also personally supported the Hispanic Heritage Foundation over the years, from our partnership with the NFL to our youth programs to our Dream Lead Institute. Congressman, thank you for joining us today. If you could say a few words, and then we'll get back to the panel, but we really want to hear from you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to address everyone. First, Mr. Tijerino, we appreciate the great work of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation hosting this charla, and all your support for the Latino Smithsonian, something that the Congressional Hispanic Caucus has prioritized. And we also want to thank Disney for your commitment to diversity in film and television. This is a good next step here, as we could see today. something critical for folks like myself who serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee and oversee a lot of these movements forward in diversity. And we want to thank Disney also for their commitment locally, working with our region in Central Florida through a difficult time where many of our fellow Puerto Ricans work at the parks and in the Walt Disney hierarchy in Central Florida. What an exciting continue of this progress by making this new adaptation of West Side Story. You know, we know about the tale of the Sharks of Puerto Rican descent and the Jets, an Anglo gang, and Tony in kind of a Romeo Juliet setting falls in love with Maria, of the sister to the leader of the Sharks. And it really reminds me of my upbringing. I was raised in New Jersey. My father was born in Manatí, and my mother is of Italian descent. So this story really plays home for me, being someone who grew up in the tri-state area. My parents met in the 60s, so a decade later. But I'm part of that next generation. After that first story of bitter rivalry and love comes marriage and a generation of folks who can be of Puerto Rican and Italian descent like myself or many others as we see that intersectionality even to this day. And so, you know, this is a story of love, a story that's a snapshot in time. And we know there are more stories to tell. And that's what I'm so excited about today, especially with the commitment of hiring folks directly from Puerto Rico to be able to act and participate in all the different aspects of production, because these Latinx dynamics that we see here will also make for amazing stories in the future, stories like the next generation after the West Side Story, like My Family. So I welcome everybody. I'm so excited for Hispanic Heritage Month for you all doing this, and very excited to see the film when it comes out. I know we'll all be waiting anxiously for that, and I wish you all break a leg in the grand opening.
Thank you so much, Congressman, and thank you again for all the work you do on behalf of the Latinx community. And where can I get those flags to put in my living room? I'm assuming you're coming from home.
I'm in my district office in Sydney.
I was kidding.
So we don't have these. Mrs. Soto would never allow these just sitting in our desk at our family office. Now I'm at the district office in the heart of Puerto Rican country here, El Campos and Kissimmee, and we have Orlando in the district and other parts beyond that in rural areas. But this is a big deal for the folks of Florida's 9th. Thanks for that this opportunity to be able to address you all and for the important work you're doing to tell all of our stories.
Thank you, sir, for all you represent and who you represent. So we're going to take it back to Cindy. Cindy, what was the casting process like? Like, how did you go about finding such large and talented casts from around the country and the world? I mean, I know that, and especially as it relates to the Sharks, because you found 8 of your cast members in San Juan, which we're thrilled that Ana was chosen. Can you describe that process on the island as well?
Well, the most special part of casting this film, I have to say, was being able to be in San Juan and being on the ground casting there. And what was amazing is I have a lot of stories. There's 2 stories. One, which is amazing, is that there were two of the members of the Sharks that we cast are from Puerto Rico, but were living in Florida. And we had initially gone to Miami, and they didn't do an open call there. They didn't come to the open call. They came to the one in Puerto Rico. They didn't want Florida. And Ana Isabel, is this true? I mean, I can't remember if this is true or not, but did you audition in New York, but then you flew to Puerto Rico for the open call as well? And you were in the open call in Puerto Rico. And that's when we then went to the next step with you and David Morales and Sebastian. But is that true? I think it is true.
I sent self-tapes.
Right.
I never auditioned in New York. I went to Puerto Rico.
I knew that you had auditioned previously, but then when you came to Puerto Rico, when we were in person, that the magic was there, right? And then you came to all of the other, back to New York to then audition again. But with David Morales, this is an amazing story, which is that David Morales was in Florida and he found out that we were doing an open call and that I was going to be there in person, and he doesn't have very much money, and he called his mother and he said, you know, Mama, this is my dream. This is what I want to do. This is my shot. I really think I need to go to this open call. So his mother, they collected all of the money that they had and bought him a ticket back to Puerto Rico to come to the open call. And everybody waits, you know, all day for the open call. And he came and he was magnificent and just beautiful and gorgeous and so special. And so when we were all done, he waited outside with his mother and with his sister so that we could be introduced to each other, so that I could basically tell her and him in person in front of each other that he was going to have a callback and that he was going to have a callback for Steven. And just the tears, just the tears were staggering. And so that's one story of many stories, because we have 20 people who are of, you know, Puerto Rican descent, and we have many more who are of Latinx descent, and so many came from San Juan. And we went twice, and it's just an experience I'll never forget, ever. Personal stories, you know.
So Cindy, this is something I remember you talking about. So can and then we're going to move on to the other members of the panel. But
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about what goes into this, like the amount of research you have to do to just cast, the historical experts, the dancers, the dialect coaches, and other artists that you had to envelop into this whole process to make sure you got it right?
Well, you know, you do always have to start with the actors that ultimately you start meeting. And once you start meeting one person, it opens up the world for so many people, right? But once we start, what we do is we get in touch with every single organization, person, you know, any kind of, you know, father of this person or that person, but we reach out to you, we reach out to Ben, we reach out to every single person and just ask everybody to send anyone to us, anyone that is right, anyone that's appropriate. We will see, we will audition. But also when you put out the word that there's an adaptation of West Side Story that's going to be made, I mean, this story, people just flock. It's just so powerful for them, for the community, to have an opportunity to tell this story again. And then if you put Steven Spielberg and Rita Moreno and Tony Kushner on it, and it just goes viral. And so then everybody sends in a self-tape and you watch it, and then you meet everybody in person, and there's so much organization that goes into it. You know, Justin Peck was our choreographer, Janine Tesori, our music director. They all came to San Juan with us. Victor Cruz, who is an amazing actor I've known forever, was also the dialect coach with Tom Jones, and also Julio Manghe, another actor in New York who I've known for 20, 30 years. I mean, he was amazing in Cape Man, you know, but he came on and he was helping. And it was just, however we can get it right, let's do it, and just make sure we get it right. And
you got it right with Ana. So we are thrilled that she's a part of this. So yeah. Ana, as an actress from the island, you may come to West Side Story with a different perspective than some of the other actors who grew up on the mainland. How did it feel to be a part? And I know this is, what I know of the process, it's all nuance. So how did it feel to be part of this project? And you could tell us a little bit about the audition process, which I think is interesting to our audience. And how is it different than other projects you've auditioned for? And from the other side of the table, what did you notice about how extensive this search was? Because Ben and I can tell you, they reached out to everybody. Prospero reached out to everybody I knew, because I was getting calls. Hey, if you know anybody. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, just by hearing Cindy and you, I'm getting emotional. Just like thinking about exciting all this process was to me and how special it was. I'm sure that Steven, Tony, and the entire creative team, like they came into this project aware of the ways, you know, West Side Story has been received by some in the Puerto Rican community. So from the beginning, they were committed to telling this story with the proper context it deserves. I could see the commitment in Cindy's team. They took the search all over the world. I was part of it. You know, I started sending self-tapes, and it was through Zoraida first, because I saw the news. I saw the newspaper one day. My mom called me. Everybody through Facebook started sending me messages. It was like everybody was rooting for me to get this role, because they knew it was perfect for me for some reason, for any role in the movie. And it was my dream to work with Steven Spielberg for so many years. He was part of my vision board, and he was actually the only director that was part of my vision board that I did. I think it was in high school or middle school. So for me, when I heard that he was, you know, doing the remake of this film, I was like, oh my God, I have an opportunity to make it big, or to, you know, to be in the big screen, because I've done movies, I've done independent films, but nothing like this. This is my major feature film debut. And that's why I'm so grateful to Cindy forever. And I'm so grateful to the entire team. I know they came to this project with a clear vision, and they have been, you know, researching, and they have advisors from the Latinx and Hispanic community. My audition process was magical. It was super long. So it was a test of patience and and, you know, trust in the universe. I think I was fasting with my mom, my grandmother, for like a month and a half, just praying to get the job. It started, like I said, with a self-tape. Then nothing happened. Then I sent another self-tape when I was doing West Side Story at the Guthrie Theater. That was the summer of 2018. I was playing Anita, and I heard the audition process was still happening. And I'm like, I haven't heard from my first self-tape, but you know what? I'm gonna try it again. So I called my manager, and I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, it's not every day you have a Puerto Rican role in the big screen of Hollywood. So I wanna try my best to be there. Let's send another self-tape. And my manager was like, you're too old, or they already said no. Like, my manager was so negative, and I was like fighting with her, like, no, let's do it. So I sent that second self-tape, and then nothing happened. I finished my West Side Story at the Guthrie, the run there, and I came back to Puerto Rico. No, I'm sorry, it was New York. I was in New York auditioning, and I heard from Zoraida Sanjurjo that they were going to Puerto Rico, like the whole creative team, Cindy and the whole creative team was going to Puerto Rico for open casting calls. And I was like, you know what, I think I have to fly there. And Zoraida, she called me and she was like, I want you to be here because like we saw your self-tape, and I know you from the island. We believe in you, but I just want you to think about it, because there's no guarantee you're gonna get it, and you're gonna spend money in the ticket. And I'm like, Zoraida, this is Steven Spielberg. The whole creative team is gonna be there. I have to do it. So don't worry, my American Express is clear. So I was like, sure. And I think it was like the day before. She called me the day before of the whole weekend of the audition. It was a whole weekend. I'm sorry. Yeah. And I flew there, and it was an open casting calls. Honestly, it's been a while since I'm not used to go to open casting calls. I always go having a previous meeting. So for me, it was a whole new experience, a whole new world. I was there like everybody else. Like, I didn't care. I was like, I don't mind, you know, making the line and just wait. And that's what I did. And it was 2 days of, you know, of being there. Just imagine A Chorus Line, the musical. It was that same vibe. Everybody has like a big number, and they were like, number 17, number 11, number 8, thank you. And the rest, you're gonna keep going. And I was like, oh my God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it, you know? And again, it was so magical. It was a little bit stressful for me because I was like, I wanted it so bad. But at the same time, I was reminding myself to have fun and to relax. And I think it was Cindy that at some point she came to me and she was like, remember to smile. She said something like that because I was so tense, and I was bringing it, but I was really tense. And but then the entire creative team, they were so amazing, and they made all of us feel like we belong and that we just needed to have fun and enjoy the process. And I feel like all those nerves went away, and I got to the top 3 of that audition. And I remember the other 2 ladies were, one was 15 years old, who is Juliet. She also got the role. She's part of the Sharks. And the other, I think she was a different look. And I'm like, I don't know what they're looking for. I was so in my head. I was so nervous. So I was just, you know what, Anna, don't think about it. Just do what you love and enjoy it and forget about the rest. So we had fun. The 3 of us just came along great. And that was it. A whole month passed. Nothing happened. And I was like fasting with my grandmother, with my mom. And all of a sudden, the email from Cindy Tolan came. And it's, I will always remember this email. It was, Steven Spielberg loved your audition, and he wants to see you in a callback in New York City. I have goosebumps right now. It was one of the best days of my life, and
Yeah.
it was truly one of the best days of my life for many reasons. And I get emotional. I'm sorry if I cry. I'm always crying.
No.
Because it meant so much. It meant the opportunity that I don't get a lot as a Puerto Rican, having an accent. There's not a lot of stories for people like me out there. And for me, it was that, and also it was the opportunity to be in front of Steven Spielberg, the director of my dreams. And for me, no matter what happened, no matter if I got the role or no, I won. I was, oh my God, I was in the clouds. And then I went to New York City, and it was the best audition process I've ever experienced. The best.
So Anna, I have, I'm the father of a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old as of tomorrow, and a 10-year-old. So you mentioned vision board, and I mean very briefly, can you just talk about what that is so that if they're listening to this, Mercedes, Toñito, and Alta Maria can see what a vision board is, and that you had Steven Spielberg on it and you made it come true?
A vision board is a board. You can get any piece of paper or a board or any place that you like in your house, or somewhere that you can see it often, or if you can see it daily, even better. And you put there all your goals and the things you want to achieve so you can manifest them. It's like a way of reminding yourself of the things you want to conquer and you want to achieve in your life. It includes your family, your personal goals, your professional goals. And yeah, I remember, I think I still have it. I showed it to Steven during the shoot, and he got emotional. I got like an Oscar. I still have a lot of work to do for that. I had Steven Spielberg. I had in my apartment in Miami, and I lived in Miami for 4 years, so I made it happen too. I don't know. It's a way to manifest, kids.
That's great.
It's a way to just put out there what you want and see your goal and just go for it.
Thank you. I hope it's not too late for me to get one in my 50s, but okay, so.
It's not, actually, you're supposed to keep doing a different one every 2 or 3 years so you can upgrade.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
There's still hope for me left yet. So, so Carla, I want to turn to you because this is the part that I'm really interested in hearing about as somebody that works with the community directly.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when you talked about this on site, this part really spoke to me in terms of some of the programming we do is around workforce development and opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this industry. And that's what Ben works on. So it was a tremendous production, of course, but how did you work with the communities where you filmed? Because I know
Right.
that there's a very strong investment on where you film. How did you hire the crew members from those neighborhoods? And I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of
Okay.
a bunch of questions. So just know that I'm going to keep rattling them off to you. So I'll let you answer those first.
Okay. So, I mean, there's layers to the process, right? So and it happens in a wave as you go hiring. So when the production begins, you have your Cindy Tolans, and they're trying to cast the movie, and then we're trying to assemble the administrative element that makes the film that's in the office. So when we started, it actually wasn't as daunting of a task because I came from a bilingual family. I had always gone out of my way of having a diverse office. We wanted an office that reflected the communities we were shooting in. So we were looking for people of all backgrounds that were multilingual, because we felt it was really important, should anyone from the neighborhood need to call the office, that if they didn't speak English, they had somebody that could speak Spanish to them. So that process started and finding assistants for everyone on the film that also looked like the people of the community. So that when we rolled into town with our circus tents, we looked like the communities we were rolling into. We didn't want to have the tents get built and then all of a sudden have everyone say, well, who are these people? And that doesn't reflect our community. And how are they telling this story? So we went out of our way first to start with the administrative step, right? So we had that. Then as it expanded, it was very important to us that our core crew also looked like the communities we were shooting in. So we went out of our way to make sure that as many crew as possible that could be either Latinx or bilingual or women or minorities, they were all equally represented. And then what we tried to do as we shot in practical locations is we started to embed ourselves with each of our locations department members in each of these pockets of neighborhoods and these streets. And so if you were in a predominantly Black neighborhood, we would try to put a location person there that knew that neighborhood and that resembled that community, so that as they went trying to crack back the armor of the community, that they felt welcome there and that the community felt like they could speak freely with them. So that's an important level in terms of trust when you're trying to ask people to, I mean, New Yorkers love their parked cars. So you're asking people to clear all of the traffic, and we're going to do dance numbers in your street with playback, with period costumes. This is no easy feat. It's not like, and it's not money. Do you know what I mean? It's not, you can only buy so much with money on the streets of New York. What you need is goodwill. And what you need is a sense of everyone, a common goal. So we did that almost everywhere we went. And what's amazing about New York is that you could be on a south side of a street and it's predominantly Puerto Rican. And you go to the north side of the street and it could be Italian, or it could be Polish, or it could be, you know, of all these different ethnicities that encompass New York. Because we're so densely populated, it meant that one of our hero locations, and I think this was one of our most complicated locations, was that it had a mosque that called to prayer, and everyone was on the street and needed the area we wanted our dance number to be at. So they said, you can come, we will celebrate you, we will let you do everything, but you cannot come during these hours and you cannot come on this day. And of course, what do you think happened in the film business? We needed to come on that day and at those hours. And I really believe, had we not cultivated that relationship in advance, I'm not sure that when we shot in the teens, in the hundreds, they would have let us be there. But we had that relationship to build on, and they knew that we weren't coming from a place of entitlement, we were coming from a place of caring and authenticity, and they let us come. And they really had the right, not only from the sense of community, but spiritually, they had the right to tell us not to come, and we would have figured it out, but we really needed their help, and it worked.
And it's all about relationships and,
Yes.
and a respectful approach.
Yes.
I wish others would take note of that as we live in the climate that we're in these days. So I also want to hear a little more about the West Side Story PA program
Sure.
and efforts to bring Spanish-speaking PAs, because that is so critical for a lot of people in the audience right now that are interested in the industry, and that's a place where you can start.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We did it in a couple of different ways. There's Lady, who became the most famous production assistant on the whole film. She was not in the film, but she was on the film. And first Cindy met her in Puerto Rico. Steven was enamored with her. She was so service oriented and desperate to be a part of the process of cinema. She wanted to make something. And they gave me a list of 8 people from Puerto Rico that all were just standouts. And then Steven said, why don't you hire 1 or 2 of these kids, interview them and see if you like them, and if you want to bring one of them up for the longest stint of the job. So it was early pre-production, which would mean in a freelance world, you could have up to 14, 15, 16 weeks of prep. Then we had a 79-day shoot, and then Lady stayed with me until, with us in the office for almost 2.5, 3 months of prep. So she really committed almost a year of her life to New York City. And I met her, I interviewed her 3 times on the phone, and I just had an instinct about her. Not it's not different than what Cindy does, only I cast the background and she casts what's in front of the camera. Because everything that Ana Isabel was saying, it reminded me of how magical that project was. And as kinetic as the cast was, and how symbiotic that process was, I feel like those of us that were around it and facilitating the film felt the same spirit. And we might not be an actor or a musician or a singer or a dancer or a trifecta, but which is what they all were. But we're something else, and we felt important, and we felt we were a part of something. And that is what it's supposed to be about. And I think we succeeded at that. So that was how we got Lady.
Right.
But on a practical level in New York, we did a couple of other things, which we went into communities and we offered PA training programs, which was, I think, one of the things that we talked about way back when, you and I, no?
I remember.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we did that both in New York, and then we did it quite heavily in Paterson, New Jersey, because we ended up building, a lot of people don't remember this, but before Lincoln Center was Lincoln Center, it was a community that was then bulldozed for the arts. So it's kind of got this dual-edged historical period in New York City. And we couldn't find anything that was urban enough, that wasn't a parking lot or wasn't a brand new building in the immediate area. So we went to Patterson and we wrote to all the local colleges adjacent to Patterson, New Jersey, and we asked for as many people that were interested, that were either Latinx or of color, that would be interested in a training program. And we did what we called a PA boot camp. We taught them what a walkie-talkie was. We taught them how to ask politely to somebody who has the right of way to give way, which is like kind of a tricky thing to do in an urban city. We talked to them about how to diffuse situations when people are just frustrated because they're just trying to get to the bank. How to be entering a neighborhood and be assertive and sensitive all at the same time. So we did a 2-day boot camp, and then we hired something like, I feel like 21 kids from this program, and then they feathered in based on their academic schedules and their other schedules. Everyone was paid, and it was great. And there's a couple of kids that have subsequently finished college and now moved to Brooklyn and are working at shows at Steiner Studios that I've bumped into a couple of times. So I feel like slowly but surely we're getting there, and it's natural.
I firsthand, I've heard from you and Cindy in terms of the inclusion work that you're doing as individuals, and like you're personally invested.
Yeah.
So what do you see are the most effective ways to strengthen that talent pipeline and grow people beyond those entry-level positions? Because it's wonderful to give somebody a shot and an opportunity coming in, especially behind the camera. But what are the best practices, or that you think are the best ways to actually grow them beyond that opportunity to get into the industry, where they can actually grow and be another Carla or another Cindy at some point?
Well, I feel like we're so many of us come from families that are immigrants, and I always feel like when I look at my parents and I look at my sisters, both my sisters' successes, I think the most common thread between us all and our community is work ethic. And if you have work ethic and soul, which I feel like we have in abundance in cultural families, I think you can get there. That's honestly, if you have those two things, you're way ahead. Way ahead.
There's a third real big one, and that's opportunity, and that's what you're providing. So that combined with those other two things are great. So real quick, this is the last question I'm going to throw at you. I know that some states like New Jersey are offering incentives for meeting diversity thresholds. Do you think these work? Should they be mandatory? Because I know California just has a mandatory threshold for board of directors for companies that are based in California. So can you talk about that, and what are ways to track that progress?
Yes, I think it should be made mandatory. Until we have to stop asking for it or working towards it, it should be mandatory. It's really that simple, because it's like, if you don't look like the community you're entering, why would they want you there? If it doesn't become every day to see that when Steven Spielberg turns around, that he sees as many men and women of color in front of the camera as behind the camera, if it's not natural, then we have to work at it, right? I mean, that's what this country was supposed to be about, is diversity. So ultimately, until we have to stop asking for it, it should be mandatory, and here's why. Because ultimately, it's called show business, right? So if it's called show business and they get a rebate and they get a tax incentive, so you get an added 2% in New Jersey if you have a diverse crew. So ultimately, it's a risky business. So these people are putting in, let's use Disney, for example, in this particular instance, decided that they were going to make West Side Story at a very hefty price tag. 2% of a very hefty price tag is a lot.
Yeah.
So if spiritually they're not there, financially you can get them there. And then maybe then they'll realize, hey, this is fantastic. You know, it creates an authenticity to it. So I sort of believe, does it really matter what the incentive is if what comes of it is a positive? And that's the way I saw tapping the 2% in New Jersey.
Thank you for that. I love that. Until we have to stop asking for it, we need to have it. So, and I'm going to switch over to somebody else that's very, very focused on that pipeline in front and behind the camera. Ben, can you tell us about Nalip's efforts in this area and what are some of those challenges that you meet up with and the importance of collaboration to get other organizations like ours that aren't necessarily just in that vertical, but can support the industry through tech and other areas?
100%. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. I'm honored to be here, and I'm glad that we're celebrating Latino Heritage Month, Latinx Heritage Month. And I think for us, the perspective is this is the work that we do year round. So it's almost like every day every month is Latino Heritage Month for us, because I think this is our mission. We were put on this earth to be able to advance and empower the next generation of folks that are going to become the next Carlas, the next Cindys, the best collaborators of these folks. We believe that the studio system and the producers, they're our allies. These are folks who are operating at the top of their game. And what we want to do is make it easier for them to find the talent. So organizations like ours, like Nalip, we operate in the space. Think of us as the best matchmakers. We almost operate kind of like quasi-management companies. I love matching a demand for a specific skill set and being able to discover the next generation of folks that can serve that need. The one thing that we're not is like a Costco, right? Oh, just, you know, where are the 100,000 people that can serve? At Nalip, we specialize in crafting and working and incubating the next generation, because what we do is take innovative approaches that we borrow from the tech side of things. That's what the startup side of things, right? So we look at this incubator model that's very dynamic. So we're grabbing the best parts of what we see out there. We were very much inspired by the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, the way that they pipeline the youth, right? We're talking about everything from 5th grade all the way to high school and beyond. And they have this amazing group of kids that every year they gather this alumni. Those folks that get the award on the Hispanic Heritage Awards from the youth side, they eventually become the managers that become the ones who start packaging all the elements that might become a television show or a film. In fact, I know one of the most proud graduates from that program is Jairo Alvarez, who happens to be on my board of directors. He is someone that I always look up to because I know he's going to be running a studio somewhere, but someone had to discover Jairo. I'll give you one example. He was one of the few that actually worked at Warner Brothers when there was a mailroom that is still accepted high school students. Think about that. And so for me, the future Lou Wassermans, the future Bob Igers, because you notice where I'm aiming for? I'm aiming for the North Star, almost like that vision board, right, that Anna has. We're looking at not just having PAs. PAs are great. The PAs of yesterday are going to become the CEOs of tomorrow, right? They're the ones reading the stories. They're the ones that are basically embedding themselves with this entire process of the Hollywood studio system and media and entertainment. And they're now being empowered to actually create universes alongside with the studios. So make no mistake, the Jairo Alvarados are going to be the ones who listen to the pitches by the next J.J. Abrams, by the next Steven Spielbergs, because that's what it takes, a friendly ear that's highly tuned. And our job as an organization is to help inspire that. So how do we do that? We believe in this system called diamonds, polished diamonds, right? We need to be able to spot the gems that happen to be they're right next to you. I'm so glad that you brought up this PA system because they're in your neighborhood. those are the diamonds. Let's bring them in to start polishing them. What I would love to do is make sure that those folks that went through the program that happen to be Latinx, let's give them a leg up and give them more of a sustainable approach where they can, I don't want to have a brain drain effect. I don't want to lose the best of the best. So our approach is to make sure we identify them, build a support system, and make sure they have jobs and opportunities lined up so we don't lose them at the next step. Because believe me, we're gonna make sure that we reintroduce those same PAs and those same folks that we're identifying from the Peter Star Producing Program, or the kid that grew up down the street from NYU that couldn't afford to go to film school. We wanna make sure that we introduce him to Carla again and say, hey, these folks are ready to go. Guess what? They could be the next mentee to be a non-writing EP. So NALIP is actually launching an incubator, several incubators every year to be able to focus on those areas. So that's a way that we can contribute. So we're partners and allies.
And they should all go to NALIP's Media Fest.
100%. Thank you for that plug. October 14th through the 16th, I want to make sure you're all invited because we have a plethora. We're celebrating and showcasing the best of Latinx content creators and the folks that are working behind the scenes and the actual IP. So I'm glad that you brought that up because what we do at NALIP, we try to bring in the resources so we can actually make the working samples because it's beyond the resume now. You got to be able, it's show business, right? So show me what you got. So we're able to incubate projects that can actually be sold as IP, right? So the students can pick them up and then the folks can actually get a deal or they get a job. And so in this particular Media Fest, we're not only showcasing people that we have supported over the years, but we're also celebrating like the folks that we've been supporting their entire career, such as Jorge Gutierrez, such as, Patricia Regan, such as the folks that are already making headways, the Gloria Calderon, Kellets of the world. So we can't wait to continue to launch. And for us, I just got to say, I am so thankful for the Walt Disney Company because they're a visionary company that sees that you need to be able to reflect not only the IP and the content to be reflective of its community, but the fact that they're very driven and very ambitious and they get things done. So I appreciate that they marry the outcome with the intent. So back to you, Tony.
And the big thing is that would that happen if you didn't have Christine there or Julianne there and other representatives at Disney Company? Because I know how committed Christine is and Julianne and others. So that allows that outreach to happen. And, as Carla was saying too, that culturally she's in touch with what she's trying to do and what she's trying to represent through her work. And I know it's the same thing with Christine and others at Disney. So let's get back to Ana. Ana, can you talk about, because this is important too, that once you're in the room, can you talk about that camaraderie among those cast members on the set and how it feels to actually be on something where you're not the only Latina in the room, where you're actually there with other groups and just a little bit too on the importance of being an on-screen role model, which we need. You need to see it to be it. And so you're part of somebody's vision board. So can you talk a little bit about that, Ana, please?
Wow, thank you for that. Well, to me, it is so important to see ourselves and our stories reflected on the big screen, Growing up, I idolized Rita Moreno. And I think she was one, or if not the only Puerto Rican actress I could see in film and on TV. And I saw her in West Side Story for the first time. And she's been my role model since then. So, wow, I am getting emotional again. The fact that I'm thinking that other kids will be able to see me and a whole cast of Latinos on screen, it's just so incredible. It's a dream come true. It's amazing because I feel we need more of that. We need more role models to look up to and to be able to realize that we can actually dream bigger than just making it here in Puerto Rico. I've been working in Puerto Rico since I was 13 years old. I've done everything in my island. Thank God I've been blessed to be working in theater, TV, music, you name it. And the fact that I can make my dreams come true and represent my island outside of here, and the fact that we have contributed so much to the USA as well, and we are American citizens, you know. And Rosalia, you know, she moved from Puerto Rico and sometimes was treated like an outsider when she's not. And that's something that is very magical. And talking about, you know, having a room full of Latinx, it was very loud. Very loud, and we were always dancing. And to be honest, it was once in a lifetime experience. The cast truly became a family. I'm still in touch every single day with most of my castmates. We were there for 6 months, working, living our dreams, dancing, singing with Steven Spielberg, with the entire cast and crew. And it was magical. It reflects the beauty, the diversity, and the incredible talent of the Puerto Rican and Latinx communities in the United States. And that's a blessing. And I feel the film was an amazing opportunity to celebrate both the spirit and resiliency of the Puerto Rican culture.
Absolutely.
And the shared history of our broader community.
Yeah, no, I get it. And Carla actually has to jump off, but I want to ask her one more question because I'm very curious about this because we're all dealing with it. Carla, before you jump off in a couple of minutes, how has COVID impacted your work? I cannot imagine in terms of your side of a film, what you have to work on. Can you give us a couple of minutes on that?
Sure. I think the saddest thing about COVID, beyond the toll it's taken on in our country, and how it's really sort of shattered our equilibrium, right? We're seeing something that we've never experienced, and I don't think any of us really expected it. But I think the complexity is that when you work in the arts, and you listen to Ana Isabel talk about the magic of it and the collaboration and the coming together as the community. And it's something that happens en masse, right? It's not something that happens with just one person, and there's an intimacy to it. So COVID has really rocked the foundation of this collaborative, intimate, creative process that is theater, cinema, song, dance. And it has really sort of shook us to the bone. And so as a result, what it means is that we spend an enormous amount of time talking about how to get everyone to be safe. And when do we have to have our PPE on, and when do we not have to have our PPE on, and what's going to be the cadence of our testing cycle. So if you're in this zone, your cadence is going to be 3 days a week, because that's what the Safe Path Forward has worked hand in hand with SAG or AF of M to say this is what that safe world is. Then there's another group that's right outside that second. So it's either the B zone or the green zone. I mean, this is all new to us. So now you're not only managing hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of dollars, you're now also managing people's true health on a different level, not their spiritual creativity, but now I'm responsible for keeping people safe. It's daunting. And as a result, it means you spend less time talking about just the creative process and a lot more of like, well, can you do that scene that way? Can you not do that scene that way? What if there's a spike? What if you want to shoot in this neighborhood and it's now, as Como has declared, that it's the red zone versus the orange zone? It's incredibly limiting, but we're going to get there. And testing is the key, and it will be what helps our industry and our schools and our communities at large come back. And we will come back, because through all sort of somber moments in life, we need art. And so whether it's a painting, whether it's dance, whether it's song, whether it's theater, whether it's film. I believe we will come back, and I believe we are needed. But COVID has really crushed it for a while. It is winning, and we are not going to let it win. But right now, it is really winning. That's, I mean, my honest opinion about it. But I'm gonna come back to being a real creator of cinema. I know it.
You're still doing it, and we need it. Like you said, during this time, we have a series that we're launching actually next month that's called Culture Comforts. And it's exactly what you're saying. We have all these statistics in terms of what culture does, what art does for your mental health. So thank you for everything you're doing. And hopefully everyone is wearing a mask.
Yes.
And I will go over to ask another question, but I thank you so much for being here with us. It means so much to have your representation. I'm
so happy to be here, and lovely to see you ladies, and cry publicly. It's all good. It reminds me of how it was a really special time. We'll just hold on to it, and then the movie will come out, and you guys are going to flip. It's going to be amazing.
All right. So
all right.
That's a
see
good
you all
segue.
Later.
It's a good segue to Cindy. So Cindy, you're one of those people that if anyone has a chance, and I almost feel like just having a charla just with you to talk about your anecdotes and experiences. And I've talked to Monica Villarreal about this too, who's a huge fan of yours. We know you've cast hundreds of films, television shows, and Broadway musicals. What did you learn through this process as it relates to expanding opportunity for Latinx, but also other communities, whether it's Asian, African-American, disabled, LGBTQ plus women? Hispanics are historically underrepresented in Hollywood. So what role do you think casting directors can play in improving that situation? Because it's a critical role. So if you could take care of that question, we'd love to hear from you.
You know, I'm just going to go out there and I say, and it's all about socioeconomics. It really is. And as a casting director or as anybody else, you just have to seek out the people. You just have to look for the best talent wherever they are. You know, they didn't go to NYU. They didn't go to Harvard. You know, when we went to the University of Puerto Rico, there was no piano there to do the open call. We had to, you know, simply get a keyboard. And I think you have to look past money and economics, and you have to create the opportunities and just go deeper and just do more. It's not enough to say, okay, I'm going to have this audition and everybody's going to come to New York. How can you do that? You know, that it's like Anna Isabel. It's just like she flew to Puerto Rico. If we didn't go to Puerto Rico, so many of the people in the movie, you know, wouldn't be in the movie. There wouldn't be the opportunity. You have to go to the people. People cannot come to you. And it's the same with Hollywood. It's just like everyone keeps saying, it's show business, show business. It is a business. And you just have to dig really deep. And you have to just go as far as you need to go to find where everybody is. And then you have to create the talent. And then you can't forget about the people that you gave the opportunity to, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually going to give you a question from the audience. And I know instead of waiting, because I think it's the perfect time to ask you this. How do you know that you found the right person? Because it's a great question from the audience, because the first question I asked you when we met. How do you know when that's the right Anna, when that's the right Maria? How do you know?
Look, there's so many things, right? And Anna, close your ears. But it's just like, we found so much incredible talent. And that for every single person on that screen, I feel, I don't know how anybody else feels, but I feel we could have cast 5 or 6 other people. The pool of people and the talent that we found through this search is enormous. And there is an anecdote that I am going to tell you, which is David Alvarez, who plays Bernardo in the film, was in the Broadway production of Billy Elliot when he was 10 years old. and he won a Tony Award. We were looking for Bernardo. We couldn't find Bernardo, right? And Bernardo, it turns out, seemed to have been the hardest part for us for many reasons. Suddenly, I'm in my office doing everything, and just this bulb come, I'm just like, oh my God, there was that kid. He was in Billy Elliot. What was his name? And you looked him up. You find David Alvarez. He dropped out of the business. He's no longer an actor. He went into the army. He's living in he's living in the South. And so we were desperate to find him, and we just went on all the social media sites that we could find just to ping him to say, hey, we're doing this. We're looking for you. Are you interested? 2 weeks go by. He actually sees the message. He auditions, and instantly I knew he was Bernardo. Instantly. But it's not me that he has to prove it to. He has to prove it to the director. So it's like Steven is the one who knows he found the people, right? He's the one who is the perfect person. I have to find a pool of people that I can show to Steven so that he has enough, talent and enough creative choice to be able to say, you know what, Rachel Zegler, who is Maria, is the perfect person for my vision. Because it's not Cindy Toland's vision, it's Steven Spielberg's vision, right? Did I answer your question?
But they have to get through you to get to him. So
yes, but through the collaboration, you hope that you understand what the director's vision is, right? But also for me, as a casting director, it's really about people. It's really about people as individuals, in addition to be incredibly talented and gifted and everything. And everybody keeps saying, oh, it's a trifecta, or you have to be a triple threat. Actually, when you're doing a movie musical, it's a quadruple threat, right? Sing, dance, act, but you also, the camera really has to like you. So that, but again, it's just like we cast Rachel Zegler as Maria. She was the third person I showed to Steven Spielberg when we first started, and we continued to look for Maria for over a year and a half to make sure that we had the right person.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That is a great answer, and it really gives us insight in terms of how this whole process works. We're going to end with one more for Ben, which I think is an important question in terms of where do you think other productions, whether it's film, TV, live theater, how could they learn from the process that our panel just laid out, that Cindy, Carla, Anna, and you have laid out in terms of productions like West Side Story? Where are those gaps that filmmakers and casting directors and industry executives and others can help fill to improve this visibility of Latin artists and their stories that need to be told? And a lot of times they need to be told by us. So can you talk a little bit about that, Ben, and what are those opportunities?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Tony. I think for us, the concept of allyship is so important in the community because, for example, I saw it on television, right? I saw that, without having a Mike Royce backing or a showrunner backing someone like Lore Calderon, they needed an ally in the room. What I'm seeing is that there's people that are natural cheerleaders. There's people that want you to succeed, because I can hear Cindy's voice, and her passion for talent is so clear. And I think that's one of the reasons why it makes her one of the best in the business, and the longevity of that business. It can really test you. And the fact that you got to maintain that organic sense of what people are, understanding the humanistic approach. I think that's one of the reasons when you look at any film by Spielberg, anybody that can tell you he's a master, because he assembles always the all-stars team. And also, what's one of the lessons there? Once you have an all-stars team, why switch? You can go to them every time because they almost can read your brain. I think what usually happens, especially when you're laying out the groundwork for new artists, most people don't have that allyship. They don't have someone to champion them in the beginning. They have a hard time. Another example that I think in the community, we had a little bit of that crabs in a bucket type of mentality, where if one director succeeds, the other one doesn't succeed. So that's why I like looking at the Spielbergs, because I can see that he became friends with Lucas, he became friends with Scorsese, he became friends, and they all kind of were sharing their work. Latinos are starting to do that a lot more, and I love that. And actors too. For example, I'm sure that Ana recommends other actors that they should come out and audition together, instead of being like, did you find out of that audition? I hope she doesn't make it, that type of thing. On the contrary, you are all boats rise together. If you're not the right person for that job, I guarantee you that you can recommend someone. But going back to that allyship component, and I gotta say, the white allies and the white champions that specifically exist in the business, this is where I think I know that we can encourage to become a little bit better. This is what I mean. There are folks out there that still don't know if they should push a little bit more for diversity, because they're trying to read the room a little bit better. What I want to do is for those folks to feel very comfortable, because the pipeline is going to be, ready to go, that the folks that we're going to be recommending, that the folks that they're going to find, they're actually going to make them look even better. So I highly recommend that if those allies, if they want to be in the business for a long time, to get to the point where they can have 20, 30 years in the business, they might want to start looking at this pipeline. I just want to rattle off a couple of numbers just for perspective. Latinos have a $2 trillion purchasing power in the US, just domestically. We're also 25% of the domestic box office. Yes, right now, COVID it's a harsh climate right now in the box office. However, when it finally recovers, with 25%, you add Asians and African Americans, you got 50% of the box office. So we collectively, as a people, we could actually come in almost like a organic bailout of the industry. We can vote with our feet, sit down, go back to that theatrical experience, and we can provide the West Side Stories of the world an opportunity to be seen by a larger public. The second part of it, Latinos travel. Latino content can travel, meaning that a Coco can be a hit in China. A West Side Story, believe me, not only just because it was directed by Spielberg and it has an all-star team, but the fact is that it is such a important way to showcase Latinos in a normal way, without going to the tropes of drug dealers or maids or this and that or immigration. They're able to present Latinos dancing and singing, which, by the way, if you pay attention, a lot of some of the best projects that are very well known in the community, Selena, music, La Bamba, music. Latinos have an opportunity to really showcase that we are that quadruple threat in a global scale. So I think what can everybody else do better? Being able to decipher it, that alchemy is not that hard to figure out. Latinos, we always knew that we were brilliant, right? I'm not trying to be overconfident here, but look at the music industry alone. How many artists that come from Puerto Rico, right? The reggaeton movement and the Latin trap movement is global now. And so what's next? The next industries that are gonna adapt to those trends will definitely be television and cinema. And so I commend not just Disney, but also the Spielbergs of the world for understanding that this is a community that's always been ready, and we've been here forever. And the last thing on this, we're the fabric of America. We've always belonged here. We're not a foreigner thing. We're not even though our families might have, our grandparents, everything come from an experience that might come from Latin America or Spain, it is important for people not to ever see themselves as some sort of foreign element coming in as interlopers into the American experience. On the contrary, we are the American experience. So with that in mind, if we can make it easier, almost like turnkey system, like this is good for business, but it's also on the right side of history, we can definitely create systemic change.
Thank you, Ben. So I think it's important that we all know that we're not competing against each other as Latinos or underrepresented communities. We're actually competing against the lack of opportunity, the lack of inclusion, and systems that are historically set up not to include us. And we need to be impatient with the lack of opportunities and inclusion and those systems. And that's why we need allies and inside representation like all of our panelists today. Cindy, Carla, Ana, Ben, thank you for taking the time to share your spirit, your experiences, your insights. Thank you, Disney, for your partnership, shared purpose to represent our Latinx community, and thank you for the content and products that you produce that are all over my house and that make it more bearable during this time when we're confined in our homes during this pandemic. I don't want to underscore, I want to underscore that because it really has made it more bearable. Keep the content coming. And a special thank you to Congressman Soto for being with us today, and to our community that joined us, who will hopefully share this charla with their networks because it's being taped. We look forward to hearing more and continuing this important conversation. Stay tuned for our next charla and vote. Thanks, everyone.